Hi everyone, I'm Steve and this is College Support Network. Welcome to the second part of the two-part series of our UC application walkthrough videos. In the first video, I talked about some general tips to help you get started with the UC application, and then I walked you through the About You section as well as the academic history portion, which included the grades. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video yet, I definitely recommend it just because a lot of the information that I talked about then won't be repeated in this video. So definitely watch the first video if you don't want to miss out on any crucial information. For today's video, I want to finish up on the academic history portion of the UC application, and this includes two subsections which are test scores as well as activities, awards, and honors. From there, I want to walk you through the scholarship section in the UC application, and then I'll finish up with the personal insight questions or the PIQs. With all that being said, please give the video a thumbs up and let's get started. The next subsection in academic history is going to focus on your test scores. In our previous video about the UC overview, we already talked about how the ACT and test scores are going to be optional for this upcoming year. If you've taken these exams and choose to report your scores may be used for determining eligibility for California's statewide admissions guarantee, selection for some scholarships, or course placement after you enroll. For more information about some of the things I just mentioned, definitely check out that video. However, since I uploaded that video, there has been some changes regarding if the UC campuses are going to be able to use your test scores at all. For the most up-to-date information about the new policies or the new guidelines from the courts as well as from the UC system, I really advise you all to do your own research. Unfortunately, I won't be able to provide an update whenever I can. I'll try to do it on my Instagram page as well as comments on this YouTube page whenever I can and whenever I see the article, but since things are changing pretty much every single week and every month, up until the UC application deadline, I really advise you all to take this responsibility upon yourself. With all that being said, it's really entirely up to you to determine whether you want to submit your test scores or not. For students that do want to fill out this application and provide your information, I really advise you all to have your official test scores out and input the information exactly as it shows up on College Board or the ACT or wherever test that you took. For SAT subject tests as well as AP tests, this is not going to be used for admission either. However, it can help boost your application and make your application stand out if you have taken them and received good scores. Some academic programs or specialized majors will actually recommend students to have some of these tests on file to show that they're going to be a good applicant for the specific major. However, like I said before, it's not a requirement for admission. If you do have this information, just like before, make sure you have the official test scores out and make sure you put it in exactly as it shows up on your official test scores. Additionally, for the SAT, AP, IB, and even AP exams, you do have the option to put planned if you haven't taken the test yet. So if you're planning on taking it later this year or later this semester, you could go ahead and put planned, and then once you get your scores, you could submit your scores then. One quick note about the AP and IB scores is that I really recommend students to submit any score that they received or any score that they took if they did put down in their coursework that they were going to take an AP or IB course. This is because I think it reflects badly on a student if you specifically mention that you're going to take AP biology or IB physical science or IB history, and then you take the class or you take the test and then you don't end up sending the score, just because it shows that you weren't willing to be upfront or honest about the scores that you received. This is just my opinion. However, students could really do whatever they want, but like I said, when I was a previous UC reader, this was definitely something that I looked at. And the last type of test a student can submit are specifically for international students. For this section, students can submit information about the test of English as a foreign language, as well as International English Language Testing System. So for students that are US citizens or permanent resident, or if you're just not an international student, you could go ahead and skip this section. For students that do have to fill out this section, the same rules from before apply. Just make sure that you submit the information as accurate as possible based on your official test scores. The next subsection in academic history is the most fun section, at least to me, and it's the activities, awards, and honors section. Up until this point, all the information that you put in your academic history was strictly based on grades and test scores. However, now you actually get to talk a little bit more about yourself and provide information about who you actually are as a student. I really like this section just because I think it really gives students an opportunity to talk about their own personality. However, I think it also gives you the opportunity to discuss what you are the most proud of doing outside of the traditional classroom. I won't go over each and every single detail about this section. However, I do want to leave you all with some tips and some key things to remember for this section. My very first tip here is that quality will always trump quantity. You have the option to submit up to 20 different activities, awards, and honors. However, I wouldn't recommend putting them all down unless they were all important or quality activities, awards, or honors. I know a lot of students get in the trap of putting every single thing they did down in high school just because they want to make their application stand out, or they think it makes them look like a stronger applicant. However, a lot of the times it just makes it look like you were just a participator in a lot of different things, and a lot of the times they weren't quality activities that you actually did. So with that being said, how do you know if your extracurricular activity was a quality activity or not? When I think about an answer to this question, I think about 4 different things: commitment, responsibility, leadership, and genuine interest. For commitment, I consider it the same thing as persistence. If you want to know if your activity was quality because of commitment, you want to think about how long you were actually involved in it, or if you were involved in it for a short amount of time, think about how many hours you spent each day, each week regarding that actual activity or award. If it's an award, think about how long you actually spent doing it to actually get that award. For responsibility, I do think it depends on a lot of different things. However, I had 3 main questions for students to think about to see if their extracurricular activity was quality or not. The first question is, what were your tasks? The second is, what were you in charge of? And third, what was your impact on the overall activity or the award that you received? For leadership, I consider this pretty similar to responsibility, but with some key differences. For instance, did you have an active role or active board position such as president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and so on? But similarly to responsibilities, you want to just think about the tasks that you had and if you were in charge of leading others. Another thing to think about is how your leadership role affected or impacted those around you. Like I said, this is very similar to responsibility. However, the focus here is on your actual leadership role, whether informally or formally. And I say formally or informally here because a lot of the times you don't actually have to have an official role or an official title to be a leader. I know a lot of students throughout high schools don't want to be president or don't want to be wherever leadership role it is, but they still want to make an impact on others. You can still talk about this and list this as a leadership role even though you don't have the official title. The last way to see if your extracurricular activities, honors, or awards were quality or not is to think a little bit about genuine interest. I think this is really important because a lot of the times admissions readers and admissions counselors can really tell if you had a genuine interest in an activity or not. So how can you actually show genuine interest? Unfortunately, for the most part, you should have already been doing this throughout high school. For example, if you wanted to apply as an engineer or computer science student, you should have already extracurricular activities, awards, and honors that are specifically related to it. For example, if you did any coding exercises or you did any coding competitions, or let's say you did a robotics competition, things like that, you want to make sure that you put on your actual application just because it shows consistency and genuine interest in the things that you were actually doing. However, with all that being said though, you still want to make sure that your activities and awards show you as a well-rounded student. Using the same example as before, if you're applying as an engineering student, you want to make sure that you have other leadership roles, awards, honors, and activities that are not specifically related to engineering. The next thing about extracurriculars is just to make sure that you put them in the right section and make sure you fill them out as accurate as possible. For the sections, there are 6 different types that students can choose from. They include awards and honors, educational preparation programs, extracurricular activities, other coursework, volunteering and community service, and work experience. I know a lot of these different types overlap with one another, so if you find yourself in a situation where your activity, award, or honor overlaps with 2 or 3 different types, just go ahead and put it in at least one of them and put it in the one that you feel most closely aligns with that specific type. You really can't go wrong as long as all of them are pretty close to one another. Lastly, you will be filling out these sections one at a time, so you'll be starting with awards and honors first, and then you'll move into educational prep programs, and then you'll move on to the rest from there. To reiterate about what I mentioned earlier in this section, I really want you students to just be as accurate as possible and put it exactly in the activity or award that it belongs to, if you do know. Also, make sure to be accurate about what you did, when you did it. So for this, you want to make sure you put the academic year, the weeks that you attended, how long or how many hours you were actually a part of it, and so on. For the weeks and hours, you just want to make sure that you are as accurate as possible. It doesn't have to be exactly right just because it's really hard to figure that out, especially if it was something that you did freshman year. But like I said, you just want to make sure that you're as accurate as possible. Now that we're done with the academic history portion, students will move on to the scholarships program section. This is a really great thing that the UC application does because it actually provides you with information about different programs or scholarships that may be relevant for you within the actual application. In this section, students are going to be asked to select specific categories such as major interests, career interests, religious affiliation, extracurricular activities, ethnicity, and so much more. Unfortunately, you won't actually be able to apply to the specific scholarships in this section or within the application itself. However, after you submit your application, the UCs will actually send you information about specific scholarships that are relevant to the things that you selected. So if you selected that you were a first generation Chinese student from California, there's going to be scholarships that are relevant to you specifically that you'll be able to apply to in the future. There's no limit to how many categories you can select, so I advise you all to really look through each and every single category, read through all of them, and really select all the ones that are really relevant to you. If you've looked through all the categories and you don't really see any that are relevant to you, or you don't really feel like you have an interest in any of the things that were mentioned, don't worry. In addition to these scholarships, each campus and many alumni associations award a variety of scholarships that recognize students' achievement and potential. Additionally, on top of all this, please remember to submit your financial aid applications such as your FAFSA and California DREAM Act so you can become available to federal aid as well as other scholarships that may be relevant to you. Next, I want to just briefly go over the Education Opportunity Program, or EOP. I'm not exaggerating at all when I say this, but this is going to be the easiest scholarship that you ever apply to in your entire life. I believe for the UC application, it's only going to be 225 characters, which is honestly just a couple of sentences. This is really great because the EOP program at the UC system actually is similar to a lot of campus programs. They provide you with financial assistance. They also help you with counseling and advising, mentorships, and other campus support programs. To be eligible, students do have to be first generation college students or from a low income or educationally disadvantaged backgrounds. However, like I said, since the application is so easy to apply to, I really recommend you all to do it just in case. EOP notes that they serve students from all cultural and ethnic backgrounds. However, it's important to note that it is only available for California residents and American Indians or American Native Americans from any state. The very last section of the UC application is the Personal Insight Questions, or PIQ section. Similar to the Activities, Awards, and Honors section, this section really is meant for the UC campuses to learn a little bit more about you and your personality. In specific, they want to learn more about your life experiences, your interests, your ambitions, and your inspirations. For this, I really recommend students to think of writing their essays or their PIQs as an interview with the admissions office. I want you to be open and be reflective, but then also find your individual voice and express it the best way that you can. In this section, there are going to be 8 different PIQs, and from those 8, students will have to select 4 to answer. For the PIQ section, there are 3 things I really want students to think about and focus on when they're writing their essays. The first is that your essay responses should really be between 250 and 350 words. And although there isn't exactly a minimum for students to submit, I think 250 is a good number to have because that should give you enough words, at least for most students, to talk about everything that they want to talk about. The next thing is, although there are 8 questions and students select 4, none of the questions are weighed more than another. So every single question that you answer and every question that is possible to answer are weighed exactly the same. The admissions counselors, admission advisors, all look at it exactly the same, so there isn't really one that students should choose over another. And the very last note I have for you all, and I want to go into this a little bit deeper as well, is just to remember that there is no right or wrong answer. However, with that being said, there's definitely a wrong way to write your answers. So what exactly do I mean by this? I really think it's important for students to focus on actually answering the prompt and not adding a lot of fluff or adding a lot of flowery language to make the application or essay stand out. Basically, you want to just get to the point. You only have around 250 to 350 words to answer the question, so you want to make sure that every single word that you use is going to be relevant and be useful to actually answer the question. Your essays aren't a place for you to just list a bunch of different awards and achievements or trying to fluff up the paper to make it sound like a nice story. I know a lot of students want to be a great storyteller, and I think that's fine. However, try to keep that limited as much as you can and use the bulk of your essay or the bulk of your words to answer the prompt. The next tip is to really use specific and concrete examples to support any of the points that you are trying to make. Additionally, you want to focus a lot of your examples on the past and present. The The next step is to really just focus on talking about yourself. Remember that these are personal insight questions, emphasis on personal, so you really shouldn't be talking too much about your teachers, your parents, your guidance counselors, your friends, and your family, and things like that. Obviously, you can talk about them, but you want to focus on your personal triumphs, your leadership opportunities, things that you did, and other things that are related to you specifically. The next tip I have for you all is just to remember to use your own voice. Remember that the PIQ should really reflect your own ideas and your beliefs, and then it should only be written by you alone. That means a lot of your responses should have I and my statements. And the very last tip I have for you all, which I think is going to be the most important or most crucial, is to subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Got him! Got him!
And that's because I'm going to be doing an in-depth video about how to write your college essays, your PIQs, and other things like that in the future, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And the last subsection of the personal insight questions is the additional comment section. Similar to the additional comments section in the academic history portion, I really advise students not to fill out this section out unless they have something that they really want to provide that they haven't talked about already. Like I mentioned before, you should only use the space if you want to describe anything that you have not had the opportunity to include elsewhere in the application. This really shouldn't be used as a section for you to write another essay. Rather, it should be a place for you to explain any unusual personal or family circumstances, or anything else in the application that may be unclear based on what you've already written and filled out. So if you already talked about some of the stuff in your PIQs, I probably wouldn't recommend putting it here unless you need to provide more information on it. However, this is just my own personal opinion. If you feel like there's some information that you really want to provide, or there's just some things that is really unclear and the UC application should know, I definitely recommend you to do that. Now that you fill out the entire UC application, you're good to submit, right? Wrong. Actually, now I really recommend students to really look over and review every single page at least 2 or 3 times before they submit. On top of this, I really advise students to contact any counselors, teachers, friends, family, and parents if they have time, to see if they can look over your application to see if you filled out all your information correctly. And with that, that's all the information I have for this specific video. Before I let you go though, I do have a couple questions that I do want you to answer. The very first question is, what UC campuses are you applying to and why? The second question is, what part of the UC application is the most confusing to you and why? On top of this, I want students to leave down in the comments if they want me to do an in-depth video about anything I talked about today. So if you want an in-depth video about how to fill out the academic history portion, or you want to learn more about how to fill out your activities, awards, and honors in a way that makes you stand out as an applicant, definitely leave all that in the comments below. I'd be happy to make more videos in the future. And also, if you haven't done so already, I really recommend you all to watch the first part of the UC application walkthrough video. I really think that video along with this video is really going to help you figure out how to complete and fill out the UC application. I'll leave a link in the cards above as well as in the description box below. And with all that being said, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. You could have been doing anything else, but you spent it here with me learning about college. I think that's super awesome. As always, thumbs if you learned and subs if you loved. Take care, y'all.